Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. It's going to be a little bit of a different video because I want to take you through a process live and in person. We've got these tanks which are looking really bright on camera, but we've got 4 tanks behind us that were previously cycled that have got ammonia spikes, and I want to take you through the thought process. 1, how I knew there might be a problem before I ever tested the water, and 2, what we're going to do about it. Okay, so first thing, this is Joanna's nano area. It's not her nano area anymore because she's taken some tanks in other parts of the fish room. These tanks have become quarantine tanks. Now I figured there might be an issue, really, because the tanks that she had, or at least the inhabitants that she had, there weren't quite as many fish in the tanks. And so even though they were cycled based on the number of inhabitants she had, I knew as we increased the fish, there could be a potential for a temporary ammonia spike, and that is what has happened. So the first lesson that I think we can learn from this is even if your tank is cycled, that only means it's cycled for the number of inhabitants that you currently have. If you add a lot more fish over a short period of time, you can expect an ammonia spike sometimes, and it might be temporary. So looking at these tanks, there's a couple things, and I talk about this often. By the way, we've done videos on how to lower ammonia. I'll put that in the upper right-hand corner. We've also talked about what to do if your fish tank is cloudy. This is cloudy, this is cloudy, this is cloudy. And I get a lot of comments still on the video that we did. It's our most popular video, what to do if your tank water is cloudy. And my first response is always check your water parameters. Often when tanks get cloudy, there's something off about the water parameters. Usually, but not always, there can be an ammonia or a nitrite spike. So that was one of the first clues. I came down here in the morning, the tanks were fine the day before, and they look cloudy. Now this one's still a little bit cloudy, or is a little bit cloudy. This one a lot more, which is surprising because this tank here has got more fish, and it only had 1 fish in there previously before I put all of these rummy nose rasboras in here. This tank actually had more inhabitants, and so I'm surprised that this one's showing a little bit more cloudiness. This tank over here, Joanna had all kinds of fish in here, but these are just larger fish, all these rainbow fish, and they're going to produce a little bit more bioload. This one up here, this 14-gallon bow front, again, it was stocked, but just not as heavily. Here we've got a bunch of Adolphi cory cats. So first clue, cloudy water. So that cloudy water tells us that there's probably something off about the water parameters. Second clue, I look over here at these rainbows. Now these rainbows have been with us now for a little bit, and one of the things I notice is some of them are getting a little dark. If you have fish that are normally brighter in color and all of a sudden some of them start to darken up, that can mean stress. Now the stress can come from a number of different areas or a number of different reasons, but in this particular case, it kind of gave me a clue. You know what, maybe something is off with the water parameters here, so let's go ahead and let's check and see what's actually going on. So hopefully this is somewhat in focus. It's really hard to see on the camera, but this thing is showing somewhere around 0.5 parts per million for the ammonia. So this is telling us, yes, there is some ammonia in the tank. It's not a huge spike, and I did all of the tanks, and they're basically coming out the same. Now, what are we going to do about it? All right, so step 1, big water changes. A lot of people think, oh, if I've got an ammonia spike, I'm going to do a 10%, 20%, 25%. Oh my gosh, I did a 50% water change. That's helpful. We're going huge on this one. We're going to do like 80% water change. And we're not just going to do it on this tank. We're going to do it on all the tanks where there is an issue. So lesson number 1, if you want ammonia to seriously be reduced, you got to go big. A 25% water change when you've got 1 part per million or 2 parts or 3 parts per million ammonia, it's not going to do a whole lot, and you're going to wind up with the same problem. So we're going to go big with this one. Same here, and same up here. All right, so we got these big water changes going on those 2 tanks. This one up here is almost done. We just started this one. A lot of people ask, what's better, to do 1 big water change every week or multiple smaller ones? That depends. If your water parameters are stable before and after you do a large water change, that might be the best way to go because you're only sticking a gravel vac in the tank once a week. You're only disrupting the ecosystem once a week, where maybe some fish get stressed out if you're shoving a gravel vac in their face every single day. Like, maybe you do a 50% water change once a week under normal conditions, or 30%. And the other option is to do, well, I'm going to do 5 or 10% per day every single day. Well, do your fish freak out every time you stick a gravel vac in there? Because if you do, you're stressing them out every single day. It might just be better to do one large water change. Now, if your KH and GH are really low, and every time you do a big water change, it actually changes your pH too, maybe it's better to do smaller more often. But right now, that doesn't matter because our issue is ammonia. And that trumps every other thing that we've got going on in terms of our water parameters, because ammonia is immediately toxic. So that's goal number one. We have to get that down because that can lead to stress, which leads to all kinds of fish disease. So that's step one, getting these large water changes done. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start filling even though we've got a tank still draining. Step two is we are going to use a product like this. Hopefully it's not too blurry, the Fritz Pro Aquatics ACCR. This is not only going to remove chlorine and chloramines, but most importantly in our case, the ammonia. And if we look at the directions, it says if you add about a teaspoon, I believe it is, it's going to lower the ammonia about 1 part per million for every 40 gallons. So we'll have to take that into account when we're using a tank like this, which is only around 8 gallons or so. This right here, this is step 3, and that is adding Fritz Zyme 7. This is live nitrifying bacteria. We add this to each one of the tanks. Now, if I had Fritz Turbo Start, I would prefer to use that because we have an existing ammonia spike. This is actually better if you are setting up a new tank, but we're going to add this with every single water change that we do over the next couple of days. So this is where we're at right now. We've got a yellow ammonia tube. That's what we want. I ran out of the strips, unfortunately, because I've been testing so often with these tanks, but we're back with the liquid test kit, and these tanks are showing much better results. It took a few days of water changes just like we showed, but it definitely has helped quite a bit. Okay, so what did we learn? Step 1, big water changes, those little 10, 20%, 25, 30% water changes. If you have an ammonia spike, it's not going to cut it. You need to do big water changes, 75, 80%. Just make sure there's enough water in the tank for your fish to still swim around. Step 2, a lot of people ask, what do we do about the dechlorinator? Do you put it in before? Do you put it in after? Do you put it in during the water change? We typically don't spend a lot of time worrying about that. Usually we put it in while we're doing the water change, but it's important, it's beneficial to have a dechlorinator that also is going to neutralize the ammonia. It's just something good to have around in case you get one of these temporary spikes. That in and of itself can neutralize some of the ammonia. Know that when you're doing that, you may prolong the cycle a little bit. However, it's really important to get that ammonia down. Third thing is add live nitrifying bacteria. Fritz Zyme 7 is what we use. I would have preferred in this case to use Fritz Turbo Start. We just didn't have any on hand, so it was the Fritz Zyme 7. Every time I did a water change, that went in as well, and we kept the water changes big. So this is how we dealt with these ammonia spikes in these 4 tanks. Remember, a cycle tank just means that you have enough beneficial bacteria for the bioload you have in the tank at that time. You add bioload, you're going to need more nitrifying bacteria, and so we dealt with that by adding the live beneficial bacteria with the Fritz Zyme 7. But this is how we dealt with our situation, dealt with it successfully. Hopefully this will give you some ideas if you're dealing with an ammonia spike, especially if you've got a quarantine tank like these are here. Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you in the next one.